you were talking about how you and Alex edit each other's scripts, and you
Mhm.
like had one of his, and you're like, "Look, yes, you know what's going on. No one else knows what you know about the script, so they need to be more clear right here. You know what I mean? So this needs to work a little better,
Yep.
and like that kind of feedback is invaluable."
Welcome back to Inspired Inc., the Comics Wellspring podcast, a show where we promote indie comic creators and become inspired by what they create and their journey of creating it. I'm your host, Brandon Bloxdorf, and today on the show, we have Benjamin Collins, one of the writers of the book OuterSpaced, and we talk about writing in niche genres, stories about underdogs, and what it's like to collaborate with another writer. All this and so much more on today's Inspired Inc. I always compare comics a lot to like going to the gym. There's so much that like is the same, and there's so much that you could pull from each one, the disciplinary aspects, the
Yeah,
carving time out of your day to do it, making the sacrifice and just like doing it
the
for
energy
pleasure.
boost, like the
That
creative energy boost.
I mean, sometimes like I have some of like really good eye-opening ideas at the gym because you're just there and you're not thinking about this one thing. So you let your
Right.
mind drift, listen to music, you're focusing on different stuff. And then sometimes it'll just hit you and be like, oh damn, I need to write that real fast down. And it's just like, or at least you come back to your table and you're like, oh, I get what to do now. Like you just sometimes need that break. And part of rest and breaking away from your creative output is like the best thing you could do as a creator. And it's not to like to get to a lazy point. Same thing with the gym. You want to go all the time and you need your body to rest. That doesn't mean you
Yeah.
need to be lazy. Just have like an active recovery is really good. Stretching is kind of like
Right.
listening to, I don't know, I always recommend the podcast You Are a Storyteller. Um,
Yeah, and I've gotten into that because of you. Like
oh, rad.
probably like I probably listened to at least 5 episodes
Eh,
minimum, like the long ones, the long form
yeah,
ones.
it's gold. I feel
They
like,
really dive into like the heavy stuff, like what is character? Why does this matter? I love it.
yeah. And I think some of that's so enlightening. And I kind of compare a lot of it, just like I do at the gym, to like my diet. My diet doesn't just exist, for the food I take into my body. My diet is also like the media I consume. What's on my social media feed?
Yeah, yeah,
What's on the TV? What am I listening to? What am I paying attention to? Like just
yeah.
like you, I mean, being vegan for one, I'm very particular about what I put into my body and what I eat, because it gives me certain energy, gives me certain mental clarity. Like I love how like that fuels my body and it works for
Hmm.
me. Just like you're a storyteller, that's part of my diet. That's,
Yeah,
social media
yeah,
is kind of like the dessert. If you have too much of it, you're going to feel fried out and
yeah.
drained and low energy. So your diet encompasses so much more than just like what you're eating and taking in.
You're absolutely right, because like having recently, like I'm an older college graduate. Like I graduated in 2021 because I went back after going through like a long phase of like, I guess let's just call it figuring myself out,
Yeah.
which was like partying for a long time.
Mhm.
Um, but I ended up being a media communications major, and a lot of the classes I took like talked about what you're talking about, but on like a scientific level. They're like doing studies and telling you like, yes, because you're intaking this social media and this media, like this affects you. It create your perspective, how you view the world is shaped through that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. And that's going to fuel you like on how you talk about your characters and how you tell stories and how your art comes out
Right.
because you're inspired by all these things and you're transforming it through you. You have to have a good diet. If I'm going to go into, I was going to do a CrossFit competition a few months ago. And because of that, I had a certain training regime and I had a certain, dietary like cutbacks and like additions and whatnot, protein wise and like, not eating too many snacks and sugars. And just like when I prep for writing a script, I'll kind of go back to a podcast like You Are a Storyteller and like,
Oh yeah.
all right, what do I got to do? What do I got to remember and keep in mind as I start working on this? Like, depending on the genre of it, like I'll look at different films or, films in different periods
Yeah.
to gain that inspo. To make that, just like I was fueling myself to compete, I'm now fueling myself to compete in comics.
Yeah. I always think about that when I'm listening to like You Are a Storyteller. I'm like, oh my god, this part is gold. I how do I know to like remember this and come back to it, because this little bit that he's talking about right here is exactly what I need. But
Hmm.
I know I'm going to forget to think about it.
It's
But
like
yet it's
kind of,
usually something so simple.
yeah, no,
That's
for
so
sure.
great about their discussions. Like a lot of times it's just about clarity and simplicity.
The the hardest thing to do as a writer sometimes, because overwriting is one thing and underwriting is also one thing. You could
Right.
overwrite and tell way too much of what's going on, and just you're gonna have a frustrated artist and who that can't put art on the page. You're gonna have a frustrated reader when they open a page and they just see a brick of text and you're like, man, this is I don't know if I'm ready for this. Alan Moore, I can't do sometimes. I love him. He's one of
Yeah.
my favorite writers, super inspirational. But it was just like I
Imagine
tried
being
to,
the artist that get a script.
yeah,
He's notorious for like these full on just like pages and pages for like one scene.
yep. Yeah, just like giving detail
Just
to a panel
yeah,
that you're just like, okay, thanks for setting the tone.
yeah,
Now I'm mentally drained. But then you could have, and a big mistake a lot of, indie creators and, upcomers do is underwriting. They think that they don't want to put too much on the page because they don't want to
yeah,
like spoil anything, reveal anything too fast, or, maybe it's just like, oh, well, you're going to find out when it's like, no, sometimes underwriting is a bigger crime than overwriting because
yeah,
now it's all in your head, but you haven't communicated it to the rest of us to like understand what you're trying to say or do.
yeah. And I think it was your last Instagram interview that I watched with I can't remember who it was. I think his IG is Pizza Party.
Oh, Kevin Zoldan. Yeah. Great
Right,
guy.
okay. And how you were talking about how you and Alex edit each other's scripts, and you
Mhm.
like had one of his, and you're like, look, yes, you know what's going on. No one else knows what you know about the script, so they need to be more clear right here. You know what I mean? So this needs to work a little better.
Yep.
And like that kind of feedback is invaluable because as a writer, you do make that jump a lot of the time. You're like, well, they'll get it. I get it. They get
Yeah.
it.
Or like just being like, well, if the artist seems to get it, like that's all I got to worry about. When it's, sometimes even your artist understands so much more because you've hopefully communicated and maybe had a meeting with them and talked to them about the story or gave them a Bible to kind of run off, but sometimes, the audience doesn't have any of that type of stuff. And when the audience is missing that kind of crucial information, you're going to have a story that's just, lost and confusing. And I hate to say it and I
Yeah.
hate to put in these words, but very amateur. None of
Mhm.
us are professionals. None of us are doing this on a
Yeah.
professional
Hacky,
level.
hacky.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And it's like, you've gotta realize those as you're creating your art. You got to be your own critique and you got to put yourself in
Yeah.
the audience's shoes. You're writing the story for yourself, but you're also writing for an audience. And
Yeah.
and I learned from that podcast, storytelling is survival information. So if you're not passing on proper survival information, think about how crucial that is. And I think that's why it's such a good
Yeah.
way to frame it like that, because it doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, this is critical survival information or else we're all in trouble, you know what I mean? But it's like
Yeah.
if you're not communicating survival information clearly, someone's going to die and
Yeah.
nobody wants that.
Yeah, that's good. They have a
So
couple different metaphors like that that are really cool.
yeah, and that's what I love about it. And I mean, what do writing scripts, you guys have done Outer Space. You guys are working on like your third issue right now. You have another story in the works. Like, how do you prep to start writing a story? And plus, it's not just you. You also have a co-writer with you. And,
Yeah.
that's another interesting thing too. Not a lot of co-writing duos exist. It's very rare we kind of come across them. It's always writer, artist, or artist and
Right.
colorist or something. But how do you guys go about sharing the script and utilizing both your brains to create a fluid story?
Uh Honestly, first off, I love it because of what we were just talking about, how like the reader doesn't know, but what you know in your head. And when you're writing a script, that you run into that with like Eric and I run Eric Allred, my writing partner. We run into that, and I think I'm more of like a dickhead about it sometimes, to a point where sometimes it's unnecessary, but it helps us sharpen.
Hmm.
Uh, and where he'll be like, "Well, let's do this," and I'm like, "No." this doesn't make sense to me as a this doesn't make sense, and I feel like I'm kind of stubborn about it a lot of the time, but
Yeah.
it does it gives us that back and forth that where we can figure things out to make things more clear for the reader. But as far as how do we approach it and like sharing the script, we sort of just start with like whatever the seed of an idea that we like. So we just want to write stuff that we like. That's sort of always like the, you know, the golden rule, right?
Hmm.
Write something that you want to read. And so we've always had like OuterSpaced, for instance, is an idea we've kicked around since we first met years ago. Uh, and then when we finally sat down and like, okay, I convinced him, I think, to turn into a comic because I kind of got him into like the comics world.
Nice.
And he loves and hates that. He's like, now he bought a ton of like trades and stuff like that. Now he's like wants to read all these different ones. Like, sorry, buddy, it's a slippery slope.
Hmm.
You're gonna have to find money for those comics.
That's the worst part, probably, is like when you're first getting into comics and you're trying to find your taste and trying to find what you enjoy and like what you really want to cherish. You're just like, how much money am I going to spend to go through all these artists? And
I've still,
yeah,
I still have things like on my wish list that I put there years ago. That I'm like, yeah, I still want to get that and read it.
yes, exactly.
Mm.
Um,
But then we sort of just, I mean, it's sort of like just back and forth. We make each other laugh a lot of the time, and we sort of riff and put it on the paper. Like we'll just do like a vomit run, is what we kind of call it. Like just vomit it all out. Everything like, oh, this is stupid. Like, oh, no, it wasn't stupid. What was that? What were you thinking? No, say it. Let's do it. Put it on the page. Like that's what happened the other day. I was like, no, it's stupid. I don't want to do it. And then I told him, and we ended up using it for something that he rewrote, like this really absurd comedic bit for uh, the dispensary story we're working on. So, which is just, that's what we've been working on the last couple sessions we've been writing is that like 90s action comedy sort of like with a stoner twist is sort
mhm.
of what it is. And it's so fun. Like I'm so glad that you have read it and like what a little bit of our ideas and been like, no, yeah, let's just run with that. This is fun because we're like we're weird and this is a crazy idea and some of these bits are ridiculous. And then you guys are like, no, this is fun. Let's see what you guys come up with. Like, okay.
You know, you guys are also tackling on like subject matter, you know, being about like marijuana and everything that some people find like adults, you know, it's always been like kind of labeled as adult. You know, since Robert Crumb was doing stuff in the 70s and indie comics started, they've had this kind of like stoner almost fetish like with a lot of their
Yeah.
work.
Comics with an X.
Comics with an X and things like that. You know, comics, Wellspring, you know what I mean? There you go.
Yeah.
It's one of those things how it's like kind of led to that, you know, almost that stigma and it broke out of it for a number of years. But I feel like indie comics kind of bring some of that back. Do you guys find any struggles of like selling your book or promoting or just like approaching people like saying, I make comics and then it being, you know, like a stoner book?
Yeah, I would, especially just in general. At first, it's a little uncomfortable. Like my local comic shop, like it's not like I go in there and be like, you know, at night I smoke weed, but and, like it's not like he knows that. So I go in there and I'm like, hey, we made a comic and we are hoping you could carry a few of them for us. And he's like, what's it about? And like I told him, and like it as I'm telling him, and like it's just kind of like it's sort of like Cheech and Chong. That's sort of how I relate it to him. Uh, like the comedy aspects of it. Like there's some weed humor in it. I sort of use the crutch that like we came up with this idea when I was really young.
Yeah.
I don't want him to think that I'm just like I don't know. See, it's still the stigma like scares me. I don't want it to be like thrust onto me as a person. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
like I'm not. I have my days where I don't get shit done, but I'm not just like lazing out doing nothing every day. I work full time and I'm trying to make comics on the side and write. We write twice a week. Like we do it for sure together. Uh,
It's creating
so
that regime, kind of like what you're saying with working out. You know, you're
yeah,
hitting it twice to three times a week. That's you're doing your full-time job, you're like figuring it out. It doesn't just because you're, you know, affiliated with one aspect doesn't mean you're just some lazy person that just lays around and
Yeah.
parties all the time. You're just like, I'm actually very busy. And when I get a moment, I'm trying to do all this other stuff. And I
Yeah,
think,
and we have been passed over by comic shops just specifically like, it's not for us.
yeah,
And I mean, I feel like that's what that means. It's like we're not into the weed thing.
yeah,
Like what I don't know, like a sci-fi. Other than that, it's a sci-fi comic, and that's just like a bunch of comics.
yeah, and then
So,
there's just
I
like,
mean,
I
maybe
don't
it's
get,
just not good. I don't know.
in the community talk about like, I guess it's labeled as drug use at this point, to
Yeah,
a lot of people, some people view it differently than that. There's a lot of stances, that are going around this type of topic. And it's kind of like bringing to clarity, like, first off, we're just being creators and we're being creative and we're just trying to like express our art because your stories do have good messages in them. Your stories do have a point. There is like a whole
yeah,
thing behind it. Some people just have those visors that if it's not like completely like G-rated family friendly Marvel, then it's not, real art or, worth it
yeah.
or things like that. And I just feel like it's so weird because like we have movies that are big successes, Pineapple Express, things like that,
I
Half
was
Baked,
just about to like kind of go like a little bit more into like the app, like the early mid 2000 Apatow stuff.
Yeah.
Is sort of like where we a sweet spot of our comedy. Like that.
hmm
So and there's heart there, it's heart.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's what it is. Like these characters are kind of real too. Like they're kind of silly, and you may not necessarily want to be friends with a lot of them, but
hmm
they're real people
hmm
for the most part.
And
Uh,
I think it's really encouraging because you're also showing that we're not all just like lazy doing nothing. It's like no, we're being
yeah,
creative and we're utilizing this and putting it towards our creativity. It's become like a lifestyle for many, but it's also like not a definitive thing. Just because you write horror comics doesn't mean you're like some mass murderer either. And I think that's where like the stigma doesn't make sense to me because
right.
it's like it's a story, and I'm just trying to write a story. There's druggies in other comics doing heavier drugs, more explicit drugs
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and
And
we're not like
the Green
judging those people.
Lantern had heroin in it.
Dude, yeah, and it's like we're all still loving Speedy on Young Justice.
Right.
Like,
Because Young Justice is pretty badass, but
yeah.
whatever.
But it's kind of cool that you guys take on such a subject matter because like you said, you want to make the comics that you want to read.
Right.
And I grew up like, my dad's from the 70s listening to rock and roll, and I grew up with comedies and funny movie like
Yeah.
Half Baked was like a movie I saw as a young child, and Joe's
Yeah.
Apartment and stuff like that. And
Friday was
so
a big one for me.
Friday was a huge one. Friday After Next is like an annual Christmas movie I watch.
Oh, that's a
Um,
good one.
like,
We can beat
and
them with a Christmas tree.
yes, dude, yeah, top flight security of the world, Craig. And it's something to like, put a smile on your face. Not all comics need to be, the Miller Dark Knight, depressing, heavy stuff. Sometimes
Yeah.
they're just like, this is hilarious. Like,
You know what?
let's
That made me
enjoy it.
smile with the Robin stuff, and that made me smile. Like sometimes.
Oh, yeah, yeah, exactly. You kind of need, and that's what the point of Robin is. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you need that lightheartedness. You need to not forget, like, to have fun. And,
Yeah.
when you're
She's
putting
using
too
a
much,
slingshot, by the way.
dude, yeah, exactly. Like, and, bring us back where I had just finished reading the Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, and it's a great book, great novel. If you haven't gotten to check it out, it's a wonderful book about comic creators in the golden age, starting out,
Ooh.
and leading into all the way to the trials from the book.
Oh, the
Uh,
innocence of the or
Seduction of
seduction of
the
the
Innocent.
innocent.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it leads to the trials where it's just like, okay, so Batman and Robin like living together and blah blah blah. And
Yeah.
this we're giving sidekicks to everybody. And he's literally saying, like, we add sidekicks because kids want to imagine themselves in those situations, and kids want to relate to something in the books, and sales go up. People have more fun making the books, and people are having more fun reading the books with the sidekick. And it's just finding a way to have fun with your book, because if you're not having fun with your book, then why are you making your book, to be honest? Like,
Yeah.
if you're not,
And do you think the
get,
reader is gonna have fun if you're not?
yeah, are they going to enjoy it? Like, and sometimes you don't want all these, like, you want something different in your book. And, honestly, like a lot of like stoner types of comics, I don't see them often. I don't come
Yeah.
across them often, you know? What's that? It's now a show on Tubi. The Freak Brothers, I believe. It was an old
Yeah,
comic
yeah,
back in the day.
yeah, based off the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers. I think
Yeah.
Mantazukas is one of the voices on it.
Hmm. That and Jay and
I've
Silent
watched a little
Bob
bit.
are
Yeah.
classic, like fun stoner characters. And it's just
The
like these
animated series is pretty cool.
the
Like
anime
watching
series
the
is
old Jay and Silent
ridiculous.
Bob stuff.
Yes, I love that, dude. I love the action figures that came out of that because I love the design of those characters.
Yeah.
Um, but it's something to like take and just be like, let's watch something goofy, let's watch someone have fun, and partake in it a little bit, and
Yeah.
that's the whole thing about it. It's just about bringing humor and a twist to things, and you know, I really do feel like that entire like kind of a just stoner genre, I guess I would say, is very heavily untouched. Really because
Yeah.
I think so many people are just scared to make those comics.
Yeah.
They are
Even it's
literally
legal
kind
in
of
so many places now too.
so many. I feel like Ohio just voted and it's
Yep.
recreational there now. And it's happening everywhere. Texas will be the last state,
Yeah.
got out
Arkansas
of
is right there, one of the last ones too.
yeah, probably Texas and Arkansas
Especially
are
with my
two.
governor. Yeah.
Yes, yes, honestly. And it's cool that you guys are taking the subject matter like that and being like, well, what's our take on it? Just like someone would take a superhero comic and be like, well, what's my take on superheroes? Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing stopping you from taking something that is part of your lifestyle. That's it's taking life experiences and putting a twist on it.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah. I
making
mean,
art and stories is about.
when so that time period in my life when I talked about finding myself or whatever,
Mhm.
that's when I met Eric. I was working at a used record store. We
Oh,
we
cool.
bought DVDs from people, CDs. Like my taste in music and movies and like in just a lot of that kind of stuff was formed during this because
Mhm.
of the first manager who worked there got me in, like started introducing me to like weird music that I was coming in thinking like I was just like really into the used, and I was like, "This is the greatest fucking band."
Oh, dude, yeah.
Sorry,
Hell
oh
yeah.
sorry, I can't. If I can't curse, I
Oh,
didn't mean
Alex will bleep it.
that. But yeah, so I was coming in like these bands are the best bands in the world, and I come to this record store where they're like introducing me to like Phantomus, like it's such a crazy weird band, or
Oh,
the
cool.
Melvins, and
Mm.
like noise rock I've never heard. And then Eric gets hired. Some guy, like we hired this guy named Eric. This guy in the cardigan. Okay. As I'm wearing one, but like at the time,
Yeah,
that was like
exactly.
my impression because we was in Texas. I think it was like kind of hot. And he came in where I was like, why is he wearing a sweater? That's just Eric. Because he just always looked like a writer to me. I was like, he probably writes screenplays. He did.
Yeah, there you go.
But I eventually admired that. I was like, man, that's part of what made me like I knew I wanted to write, but I didn't know like what my voice was or what my medium would be or even if it would be fiction or like what it would be. I just had found like a like not a passion. I'd found first that the spark of like wanting to be a creative writer at
Mhm.
the end of high school, like it was kind of late. I had a teacher that sort of like would tell me that hey, you have something here, like it's not refined at all. And I had her 3 times in high school, like Mr. Feeney. She was had her just followed me through high school. In the senior year, I think it was creative writing club or something like that.
Mhm.
And I finally like she's like, you should try to write a short story for the literary magazine. And I wrote like a detective story, and it was not good. I remember reading it years later and was like, this is not good. But it got accepted in high school, and that was sort of all I knew of my wanting to write. And then I met Eric, and he's trying to write these screenplays and encompassing like a sort of a Woody Allen, like the characterizing relationship thing with like a more modern like indie film. I wish I could think of like something, I don't know, like Blue Valentine, if
Okay.
you're like kind of thing, like really intense
Very,
emotional
yeah, I would say very
relationship
obscure.
stuff.
Go Google that stuff,
Yeah,
everybody. Really good stuff, though. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. Uh, I mean, I was like, man, he's just writing like what he wants to write. And
Hmm.
then it turns out that we were sort of like vibed on the same level. We were both smoking a lot at the time. We were young in our 20s, working at a used record store in Austin, Texas. I feel like everyone assumed we were
Yeah.
high anyway. And where you just like watch movies a lot of the day and listen, like I said, listen to music. But that's where outer space came from. One day we were like, why is it that it's always like the right people who find themselves right at like the like Independence Day? Why is it always Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum that find themselves at the perfect spot, not dead in the original invasion,
Yeah.
just there? Like Jeff Goldblum is like if you watch that movie, he's kind of like a government plant. Like he knows information throughout the beginning of the movie.
Hmm.
It that he's like an NSA agent or something. Like they don't really clarify it, but he is like has information he should not know how to.
Yeah, to even
Yeah.
access or get to. Yeah.
Uh, and then like Will Smith is just like an amazing pilot and superhumanly strong that he can knock out aliens in their armor.
Yes.
And so you have the perfect duo right there when the aliens are there to save the day at the end of the movie. And even though at some point we probably want, to win in outer space kind of in our own way,
Hmm.
they're not going to succeed right off the bat, like 100%. It's more about them coming together and learning that they're not really fighting for anything but themselves, the people next to them, the relationships they're forming.
Hmm.
And it's a bunch of just like misfits that have sort of fallen out of, like they're sort of drifting in life. I mean, that's where we were. We were at a
Yeah.
record store in our 20s. I wasn't going to college anymore because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so that was us. So that was the story we came up with, was like, okay, well, what if it ends up being the two people who are drifting through life and they don't know what the hell they're doing? Maybe they're just like smoking pot and they get drafted to fight aliens. We didn't have any other story behind it except that we were
Yeah.
probably outside taking our break.
Putting two characters and putting them in a situation and seeing how
Yeah.
they deal with it. You know what I mean? It's a classic formula in a sense. And I mean, of course, there's a lot more to that, but like when you break it down structurally, that's what you're doing. You're making two characters that are relatable, that have flaws, that aren't perfect. And then you're just like, how am I like going to put them in this wild situation and let's see what they do?
Yeah. And I mean, it wasn't for, man, it must have been at least like 7 or 8 years before we circled back and decided. I was like, hey, this could work as a comic because I just think it could. I mean, I know it would be cool to write as like an animated screenplay or whatever, but let's read some comics, circle back to me, Eric. Tell me what you think about you writing. It's not that much different from a screenplay, to be honest. And we'll try it. And then we started writing like on a weekly basis and then a couple times a week together. And since then we've really paced out OuterSpaced as like our full, I mean, what we want to do with our full first run, the first 3 issues at least, like we're writing, but we have the first one done, obviously. I just noticed earlier, it's behind you, the poster framed back there. That's badass. It's one of the 3 covers we have for the first issue. And yeah, I mean, we just made it. We didn't have any schedule. We just kept paying Jackie Venturini, our artist, as we got money to get the pay. And they kept getting better and better. She kept getting better. And like now she's even better than she was then.
Mind blowing.
Not that we don't, I was like, now we love the art then, but I mean, you're still getting better. Her coloring is getting better. I think she's been doing work as just a colorist as well.
And
so
her
like,
submission to the CyberSync one, it blew my mind. I remember reaching out to you and being like, is this the same Jackie that was in Outer Space?
Right.
Like,
that first page is just like, has that fishbowl look and it has this great coloring, this great palette, this great color palette that's very cyberpunk. And it's funny, right before you announced the like submissions were open for CyberSync, she had sent us like samples that she was doing like coloring like that. Like, hey, do you think we could try something with this kind of coloring at some point? And we're like, yeah, because this is amazing. I don't care what it is. Let's do it.
Nice.
And then that, like, wait, they're doing cyberpunk? Like, we're not cyberpunk writers. We like a few cyberpunk things. Like, I like Johnny Mnemonic, and I like Blade Runner, and I like Dark City, and, all that kind of stuff. Like, I like it. I'm just I don't know a ton about it.
Yeah.
Well, we'll give it a try. We'll give our own spin. And we came up with Cyberpooch. So because we like dogs, and so there's a dog in it, and there's some comedy, there's some silly bits in it, but there's also like a peak of action real quick as
Hmm.
well because it's a short 6-page story. But that was really fun to write as well. Cyber sync submission, cyber pooch. It was
Yeah, it's
fantastic.
really cool how things like an anthology or just like pops up, and that could challenge you with a prompt and take you in a direction of writing that you haven't done before. And I think that's what like a lot of writers need to do more often. And I was always like kind of looking down at prompt writing, especially when I first started writing. I was like, no, I want to do all my own original ideas. I just want to like think of a story and come up with something. But sometimes you just need like a little like a boost, like a little
Yeah,
push to, because coming up with original ideas is hard, and it doesn't matter who you are, how you create. Um, but sometimes a little prompt or a little writing challenge that you give yourself, artistic challenge. I do that every year for Inktober. I take the whatever cartoonist kayfabe prompt and I try to keep up every day, and I at least do pencils. But like they're characters I would have never thought about drawing before. Attempts I would have never done before. But
yeah,
a prompt, it can really take you far and elevate like you and your work. Doesn't matter if you're writing, creating, drawing, whatever you're doing. Sometimes that really is the big push, and you will impress yourself so much more, or probably have better ideas than you would have ever had before if you didn't take that on.
for sure. Yeah.
And so with your creative process, do you ever feel like there's like an ego involved, or have you guys both been able to like kind of drop that essence? And I don't feel like I get that from a lot of indie creators, honestly. But how do you guys work
Yeah.
as a team without butting heads? And it's like being in a band together sometimes, like two
Yeah.
guitarists trying to like come up with a song, and you guys are both competing for like what's going to be, the highlighted moment.
There's definitely like as we're doing it, like in a good and I think creative way, there's like clashes and like
Hmm.
arguments. And I don't think we get to like the Beatles level of like if you watch that new documentary, they're so condescending to each other. It's ridiculous.
Oh.
Um, Anywho, no, we butt heads and we clash behind the scenes while we're writing. But by the end of like the writing session, or we're like, oh, we won't end a session like frustrated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we'll power through something, or we'll be like, that works, or we'll be
Hmm.
like, now we have the basics. There's always like a button that we're like, we have this scene done, we have the basis for what we want to do on this page, we have whatever we were trying to crack is like how we finish, like we get through those like headbutting and like clashes.
Hmm.
We just figure it out, like we figure out what we're trying to write, because sometimes it does carry over, like not figuring something out. But I don't think we don't have like an ego that's like, I need to keep my bit in. Like a lot of the times when we're like look back at it, like I don't even remember who wrote which line. Like someone will write something, the other person will rewrite it, the other person will rewrite it, and then it's just like a blend of each other, so it doesn't even matter.
That's
So like we
awesome.
don't
That's
care.
super
We don't
cool.
care at all. I think it makes for. I know there's like some people who are abide by the thought that if you're not doing every single thing, like storytelling wise, like the art and the story, it's not totally pure,
Mhm.
which it can be true. And like there's those creators that do that. That's amazing. That's great stuff. But I think for me personally, and I think I can speak a little bit for Eric at least, it brings out better writing in me collaborating with not only him as a writer, but Jackie as an artist and other artists as well, which is something we take into mind when we're writing our scripts. Like, yes, we probably overwrite and we're a little specific on certain things, but we try, we're like go out of our way to leave as far as like the type of panel it is, and like we try to leave it open for the artist to bring something to the table.
Mhm.
And even at the beginning of the script, you have like the title page, and we usually do like a little paragraph that's like to the team of the creative team.
Oh, yeah, I do that all
And
the
I
time.
always, yeah, I'll put something like, and to the artist, whoever it is. yes, we wrote a bunch of scenes, but if you see something that you think you can tell the story better on the page, just do that. Show it to us. Let's see what we can do, because
It's kind of
we
like,
want something better.
when you're making a film, you have the screenwriter and then you have the director, Like
Yeah,
who's going to make the better shot? Like the screenwriter might have the better dialogue, but the director might have the better shot. And
right.
so you could use the dialogue and swap out the shot, or you could just, rearrange a scene a little bit and be like, cinematically this works better now that we're looking at it. My
Right.
cat is just fighting me right now today. I'd be like, stop it.
Yeah, my dog
Um,
is doing the same thing. He's like all in my grill.
um but that's really cool. And I think it's good to have that type of relationship, and I think you need to be open-minded like that when you make comics, because you're passing around a script, and as you pass around the script, it goes from words to images to different fonts and letterings and like
Yeah,
positionings, and it comes to life. But you have to know how to like let your ego go and just like let it all happen, let it all pour out. And just like, this is our storytelling, and especially if you're working in a partnership. Alex and I were just talking about editing our script. We literally a 2-page script I wrote. We were arguing for a whole morning back and forth on the use of one word. Literally one word. And at the end of it, we figured it out. We all made sense. We just had to poke each other's brain and figure out what was the
right.
context and what it was supposed to mean and why that word wasn't as strong as the one that whoever wanted to use and blah blah blah. But at the end of it, we're just like, dude, thanks for challenging me.
Yeah,
I wouldn't, if we didn't care and if we didn't like adore each other, and if we didn't want to make this the best thing possible, we wouldn't have had this long conversation. It wasn't about
yeah.
ego on like, you should use my word instead of your word because I'm the
Right.
editor, or
No.
no, it's about like, we're trying to make the best art we can.
Yeah. That we've had that exact same problem about a fucking word,
Yes,
where it's like,
yes.
no, I don't like. I'll be like I said, I'm a stubborn one, so I'll kind of come off sounding like, no, I don't like that word there.
Hmm.
Like,
Yep.
it doesn't. It's not. It doesn't work. I don't. It's not. I don't like him saying that word. Either it doesn't work for this character saying it, or I don't like the context. I don't know. It's sometimes it's just we have that same problem where it's just like, I don't like the word use here, or I
Yeah.
don't like this character saying that. Yeah, it's so. And it's not really the ego thing. It's just me like thinking, what if I was reading this? I would think I would be judging it this way in my head.
Hmm.
So I don't want that.
And it's good to have like two sides of that perspective a lot of the time. And working with an editor is really beneficial. Working with a co-writer, or an artist who's willing to challenge you on some of that, maybe even a letterer that's willing to challenge you on that, because it makes you really consider your work and the audience who's taking it in. It makes you kind of like think about it in another person's shoes and position. And I mean, of course, we're all making art. We're all telling the story we want to tell. We're not trying to like have anyone take over or rewrite our story, but it really makes you sit and think, be like, was this the best choice? Is this person understanding it? Was there a real purpose to like this edit? Like, should I take it in? Should I just brush it
Yeah.
off? And sometimes you're just like, no, it fits for what I want. But sometimes they come up with a great suggestion and you're like, that's what I was really trying to say. I just didn't know how to say it. And you've helped
Yes.
me.
Yes.
That's why you should be
Those
open
like
to
light
that.
bulb moments. Yeah.
Yeah. It's either going to reassure you or have you like really think about it. But like honestly, knowing how to stand your ground and defend something as simple as one word can change
Yeah.
a whole story, change a whole script. And
And
it
I
can
think,
form a stronger partnership too.
yeah, and that's it. I think we have, and I think the ego thing comes into play as like a joint ego thing. The
Hmm.
hardest part is cutting a bit that we both love that really doesn't do much for the story.
Yeah.
And we're like, hey, we need panels back here for this part of the story or up here. Well, what is this bit? Like, oh, that's funny and cool. Like, yeah, but this panel right before it's doing the same thing. Yeah, okay. And it would just boom, there go 3 panels or something. They're just
Yep.
gone. Or
Yep.
we'll cut and paint. We have a living document that's like the cutting room floor, and we keep like deleted scenes. If we ever do like a big special edition, we can put in like deleted script scenes into like the back of it or something.
Nice. That's cool. That's super cool. Or maybe even some quick layouts of those scenes too. You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean? That'd be
yeah.
super fun.
That's what Eric was saying. Like maybe we even get the pages like kind of done. Like yeah, it's like you have an actual like a DVD. You have a
Yeah.
deleted scene at the
You
end. Like
show the
that's kind of cool.
storyboarding and like
Yeah.
playing through that. Yeah. Yeah. I
A
would love
quick
that.
sidebar on that. The best version of that on a DVD is the Independence Day. The 2 disc Independence Day has it doesn't show it because it's just a storyboard.
Mhm.
But you can see the storyboard and it's, at the end, Russell K flies his airplane and goes, "Hello, you alien asshole." He flies his plane up into the beam and it blows up. He's in like an F-16 or an F-15.
Yeah.
In the alternate thing, he's in his fucking crop duster. Like that's the storyboard layout is him just like,
Oh my gosh.
the crop duster plane. And like that's the greatest deleted storyboard thing ever. Hey, cat, stop doing that.
What a way to elevate that ending too, and just being like
Yeah,
crop duster. No, we gotta change
yeah,
this up.
yeah. Let's say he was in Vietnam and he knows how to fly F-15. Sure, okay, fine,
Yeah, exactly.
whatever. But yeah, it's
Man,
oh shoot, I hit a button. There we go.
how interesting. Going from writing stories that you want to read and that bring joy to you and challenge you and can form like a deeper friendship that you probably ever imagined possible. It's opened up doors for you
Absolutely.
guys. It's taught you a lot about yourselves. You guys have grown together as writers, as creators. It's crazy what comics can really do for people, and who it can bring together, and what kind of just like you create best friends out of the people you work with, and that's what's so much fun.
Yeah,
And really just taking in the things you love in life and just being like, let's just have fun with it and party. And
yeah.
you get great books like OuterSpaced and Too High to Die when it starts coming out and being produced.
Hey, I didn't ever want to
Super
say
excited.
anything.
I know I was so scared too, but it's too awesome. But man, Ben, it's always just a pleasure talking to you. It's always a
For
blast,
sure.
and I would love to get you back on the show soon because there's still so much more to unpack, and we have so many favorite things to talk about, from creators to how we do comics to what we're doing together.
Yeah,
I really thank you for your time today.
yeah.
So
Thank
tell
you
us
for having me on here.
where we could find you, what you are up to, and what to look forward to in
For
2024.
sure. Well, I always love doing this too because like I was just in case I had like this whole page of like I'm not going to zoom in on it, but it's all like my favorite movies and comics and music and like inspiration of why I write and like stuff just in case because I didn't want to be on the spot because I know sometimes we get into like some offshoot conversation like what are your top 5 movies like
Yeah.
I didn't want to be frozen like that. But I just like
Give
talking
us
about
one
that
of those
kind of
lists.
stuff.
Give us your
Okay.
favorite list that you
It's
wrote down on there.
oh, okay, real quick. Let's I mean, they're all like just stuff I can pull from, so I even have to like let's do let's do some movies, I guess.
Yeah, honestly,
Because
a lot of your stuff is influenced by films. So yeah, give us your movie list.
yeah, because that's what I was gonna say. Because first, let's hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Got to do 5, right? Okay. So Monty Python and the Holy Grail is that one of my all-time favorites.
Top.
Saw that movie for when I was like so young, like 7. Like I started watching that so early and like laughing
Same.
at stuff I didn't know what I was laughing at.
Yeah, you
I was
don't
like, I
get
like
half of
the
those
rabbit,
notes
I like
until
the
you
Black
do.
Knight getting chopped up, and slowly I was like, oh, shit, these jokes are fantastic, and
Yes.
finally you get to the point where like the political jokes are funny, and I was like,
Yeah, when
this
you're
is this bit with Dennis, the person like, I'm not a woman, I'm a man. And that
yes.
whole little political bit is amazing.
And the
But that
intro to that movie, like you don't really understand it as a kid, and the creators were sacked, and then it
just
turns into the Mexican theme.
I literally thought that was just like a British thing. They like because they showed him throwing sacks on people.
Yes.
I thought that was just like a British joke. But you put sacks on people, and then oh, you fire them.
Yes.
Okay,
It's so good.
but yeah, I think my comedy and Eric is the same way. As it goes in that direction of absurdity and like borderlines. Like, was that smart or really stupid? What was that?
Yes.
So that is like one of my top 5 for that reason. And let's just to cross over with comic books. The original 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles
Oh,
is one of
nice.
my all-time favorites. Just I was born in 87, and so I was watching the cartoon and that movie my whole life. And that movie is genuinely like I think better than a lot of people give it credit for, especially with like the budget they were given. Has a
Uh,
dark atmosphere.
we
It's
did like
quite
a movie commentary on it, and after it, I was like, man, I think that was actually not bad to say the truth.
yeah. Like it has some pretty good messages, like with the whole like Foot Clan thing. Like this is not your family. You're finding family in the wrong place. Like Casey Jones finding like a leadership. Like he was a lost
Hmm.
person too.
Yeah, that's
So
very
I'm not
true.
going to go too far into Ninja Turtles because I could talk about that movie forever. And Judith Hogue is amazing.
Oh
Eric
yeah.
and I were talking about how if they can just do Last Ronin as a live action dark Ninja Turtles
Hmm.
movie now. Like that's the movie. That's
Bring
it.
that cast back. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That'd be
you could
sick.
bring some of those people back. I mean, Judith Hogue could be old uh, April O'Neil,
Yeah, yeah.
and you could bring in old Ernie Reyes Jr. from Turtles 2 as I can't remember his freaking name.
I don't remember. I'm
The
not a
pizza
big
guy.
turtle. I'm not a big turtles person, so I can't
Yeah,
pull
yeah.
that out of my inventory.
I think it starts with a K, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, Ninja Turtles, love it. Then, just like speaking of Too High to Die, something that has heavily inspired me and in general, RoboCop.
Yes,
Love
dude.
RoboCop.
Yeah, love
One of my
RoboCop.
all-time favorite. Again, one of those movies. I think I have this tendency to find joy in things that on the surface look way different than what the substance is.
Hmm.
Because it
Yeah.
looks like it's a silly action movie about a RoboCop when it has like the scathing capitalist like
Oh
undertone.
yes, heavy like
Yeah,
tone in that, and
it might be
then
like overly heavy-handed at times.
yes, yeah. Honestly, dude,
It's
that intro
hyperbole.
scene where he was shot down like just traumatized me as a kid. It freaked me out. I didn't know what I was getting involved in. Like, and I was like, oh my gosh, like,
But
and yeah,
it's how fantastic is it like because how often do you watch a movie where like well the villain should have fucking finished him should have just finished him
yeah,
off right then. Well,
yeah.
they finished him off. You can't blame the villains. They had like a
Honestly,
horribly fun time doing it, and then shot him point blank in the range after they ran out of ammo
yes,
shooting him.
yes,
so,
so ridiculous.
so that was these are in no particular order. So that's number 3, RoboCop, and then I was trying to. I have 2 movies here that I have to pick one or the other, and they're both like older period pieces, like World War II, and they're both written. Well, no, I don't think they're both written by the same guy, but one's a Billy Wilder, and the other one's written by Paddy Chayefsky, who is like one of the all-time great screenplay / playwright
Mm.
writers. I'm gonna go with Stalag 17.
Oh, nice.
It's an old. It's still like I think that inspires my outer space writing because it's like a group of people in a situation they didn't want to be in. Obviously, they're in a POW camp,
Hmm.
but they have these really great like the best moments in that movie are not them escaping or like thwarting the Nazis. It's when they're like quiet and they're finding like a Christmas Eve and they like risk their lives to get supplies to have a Christmas party in their POW camp room. And that's
That's
like
epic.
some of the best. Yeah. And like just the way that movie's written with the characters. And then you do see the Nazi get thwarted at the end and it's amazing. It's also something that I watch with my dad a lot, and I will always relate it to him. Even after he's passed, I'll be able to watch this movie and like remember those times. And that's something I think that like movies and art in general are
Oh
important
yeah.
to like capture like moments. It's like I remember like you can connect certain things to different things. Like if we're talking about like another thing that he like my dad instilled in me is like that comedy, like that Monty Python comedy.
Hmm.
Like
Same.
he really got me into Mel Brooks. Like he was just like Mel Brooks movies
Same. Yes.
every day,
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
time.
History of the World Part
And
1, one of my favorite films of all time. You know?
yes,
Yeah.
and Blazing Saddles.
Yes.
I mean, they're all great. I really
Yeah.
and Robin Hood Men in Tights. I grew up. That was like the time period for me because that one
Hmm.
came out when I was growing up, and so I watched that one over. I had it like memorized. But just that comedy style in general, like that, I already have Monty Python on here, but I could have a Mel Brooks on this list because that was very, very heavily influenced. We got to get out of here, I know. So number 5, this is weird. Rocky.
Oh, cool.
I had like a weird thing for Rocky growing up. I like the underdog thing. The fact that you could, for a long time, you could ask people like, "Hey, do you remember what happened at the end of Rocky?" Well, Rocky won, right? Like, no, he freaking lost. Like, but a lot of people don't remember that because it's not really about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Going the distance, and it's sort of just a character story, a love story. The first act of that movie is great, and there's not even boxing at all. Like him meeting Adrian, taking her to like an ice skating rink. He's like walking without ice skates and teaching her to ice skate and trying to get her to open up. There's a lot of cool moments like that in that movie.
It's one of those movies that he defended so well, and he wrote it, and they wanted a rewriting of that film, and they were just like, we like it, but we want it completely rewritten. And he was like, no, I'm not going to do that. If we rewrite it, I'm not doing it. And you know, the guy that helped him make it stood by that and made sure that didn't happen. And now we have Rocky, which is legendary, you know?
Yeah. And that was the other inspirational thing about that.
Executives
just like
skinned away.
Yeah. Is that he just like he wouldn't get no one would cast him and like as a lead or anything. So he wrote a movie for himself and also, like you said, stuck with his vision. And that's pretty inspiring, even if that's not the movie or story I want to tell. That's just inspiring to me. But also as a kid, I was like outside making my own like Rocky training ground, doing like rope punches. Like I'm going to be a freaking boxer like Rocky because everyone underestimates me because I'm short. And so I was just like, I bought into the people can underestimate me, so I'll prove them wrong thing. So Rocky has always spoke to me.
Dude, that's kind of circling back to like, you know, the stoner comics is that, you know, people underestimate, you know, the essence of what goes involved. And you're just like, no, like I can do everything probably better and, you know, with less stress than whatever you're doing, to be honest.
You know, you're totally right. I actually didn't totally see that connection, but you're absolutely right. You have their underdogs and like the Guardians, who are like the actual Space Force military in our comic, look down on them from the start. They're like, you guys you're trash. I could just rip you into pieces right now. You're just fodder. What are you going to do? You're going to get us killed. Like no one thinks they can help.
Yeah.
But that's why our story's there. Speaking of that, you can find anything about OuterSpaced at OuterSpaced Comic Instagram. We have a link tree there. It has like some fun videos, as like some music to go along with the first issue. You can get to our funding page where you can still get the issue. You don't have to donate. You can just buy the issue straight up. We have 3 covers. You can see one behind him right now. That's the B cover. We have 2, I think. We have the freaking Lord of the Rings cover.
Yeah, homage. I love that one.
Pretty cool.
Love it.
And then just like the standard, this is like an homage to Stripes. If you remember that cover, like staring up at the.
That's where it's from. I was thinking where it was pulled from. There you go.
Because that's like a big inspiration for that story as well. Like we not lifted, but like took a scene out of Stripes and rewrote it for our character because we love it, like the meaning of it so much, and we feel like it should have had a more impactful message in Stripes and it didn't. Like the part where he fights the drill instructor and he's like, I want to take a big swing at you, Sarge. And he tries to. Bill Murray, who's like the cool character in the movie, misses, gets gutted. It's like gut punched hard and dropped. And he puts his hat back on. He's like, maybe someday you'll know what being a soldier means. And just walks out and leaves him on his knees.
Yes.
And like, that's a great moment. And they do kind of come together, but it doesn't, he's Bill Murray. So he's cynical and wry, and he kind of just writes it off the whole movie anyway, just like, I'm cool, I'm gonna get by, whatever. We kind of wanted that to have a like lay in as an impact, like who am I a leader? Can I lead these people, sort of thing. That's
awesome. Again,
that's why
pulling from an influence, channeling it through how you perceive it and applying it to your story. No one's going to realize that connection until you say it, but it's so cool to hear, you know, like how you're able to like evolve something that inspired you and make one of your favorite scenes in your comic out of that.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, that is one of my favorite scenes in that first issue. And like I said, out at OuterSpaced Comic, I'm at BenjaminL.Collins on Instagram. I don't really care if you follow me, to be honest. I'm more about OuterSpaced Comic and Apollo City Comics. Getting that guy, we submitted to the CyberSync anthology, which is still going right now. Right? Yeah, that's 2 more
Oh yeah,
weeks.
yeah. 2 more weeks. At the time this will be out, you guys should be hearing more updates
Oh,
about
right,
what's
right,
going
right,
on. Yeah, yeah.
right.
But
But
hey, I hope
I
everyone pledged.
definitely like, yeah, still check it out anyway. Like, it's out there. It'll be out there. I'm gonna get some, and I'm gonna get them out into my shop. But we'll have more anthologies, hopefully, through Apollo City at some point, or
We
lesser
have some
known.
stuff planned. Yeah,
Uh,
a lot planned for 2024.
Eric and
We'll
I
be
will be
announcing.
submitting. So, but right now we're focusing on OuterSpaced and the Too High to Die project for Apollo City.
Mhm.
And I don't know. We'll talk about this later with Eric as well. But whenever we can start, I don't know, not promoting it, but like releasing just like stupid teases, like a bit of the script or just whatever, just to like kind of start doing whatever. We'll do it through OuterSpaced, through our stuff. But that's really all we're working on at OuterSpaced Comic and the Too High to Die. And we're just writing and writing till we can get stuff made, because you know we don't have the means to get everything made right now.
And that's part of the process. Is just, Neil Gaiman gave me the advice when I got to meet him, was just like, finish your story. You never know what's going to happen. If it's not now, if it's later, he's like, just finish telling your story and go on to the next one and finish telling that story. And something will probably come out of one of them, and
Yeah,
that's
that's
the whole
awesome.
goal, is just continue writing. It
And
doesn't matter if anyone sees it.
coming from him, not just because it's him, but like his accent and voice, it's so relaxing and calming. Be like, oh, I believe you, sir.
Yes. Yeah.
You're correct.
100%. Ben, it's always a pleasure. Can't wait to have you on
Same.
again. We'll get you on with Eric next time. We'll be speaking to Eric soon as well. And it's just always a blast, and I can't wait to read more of your work. And
Thank you. Yeah.
those for watching, stay tuned for our print tip of the week. And Ben, thanks for hanging.
Thank you.